Just like carving a sculpture requires a great sculptor, to shape the future of our children, help them become better human beings, and make them ready to face the challenges in the world independently, we need to learn the art of parenting. So today, I'll speak to Dr. Sara Rasmi, family psychologist and parenting expert, who will shed some light on this topic.
So my first question is really starting from the very beginning. How do we instill good values in children?
Well, the very first thing that we need to do is, as parents, sit together and have a discussion about what's important to us and make sure that we get on the same page as our partner. So once we agree with our partner on what is the most important set of values to instill in our children, we need to start talking to our children about them. So naming the values so that children understand that in our family, for example, it's important to be kind. It's not enough to just talk about them. We also need to model that behavior for them. Children generally learn better from what they see than what they hear. So if we tell them that kindness is a very important value in our family, then they need to see us engaging in kind behavior. And then the next step of that is that we need to react to their behavior appropriately. So if we tell them that kindness is important and we see them behaving in a way that's very kind, we should always point that out and say, very good, that was kind, excellent job, I'm proud of you. That will reinforce that behavior for the future. And if we find them engaging in less kind behavior, as children do sometimes, it's important for us to connect that behavior back to the value. So if you're in a situation, for instance, where your child has a fight with another child, snatches a toy, like many young kids do, you can simply take the toy and say, listen, that was not very kind of you. In our family, we're kind. And that's just planting that seed for them.
I like the way you actually started it by saying that as partners, we need to be on the same page because that's when things starts. In a city like Dubai or in any urban city in the world, we are constantly struggling with one thing as parents, and we all know that how much to give and how much not to give. How do we strike a balance?
The first thing that I'd like to say is that you should give as much time and attention as you can, because that's really important, and very, very few families go overboard with that. A lot of research shows that children, as they get older, what they remember from their childhoods isn't the gifts, it's not even necessarily the lavish birthday parties, it's actually the experience and the connection with their parents. So I would encourage parents to spend time, talk to their kids, actively listen to their kids, take them for experiences. We're very lucky in Dubai that so much of the world is very accessible to us by air as well as by land and by sea. So we should take them, and that helps to broaden their imaginations, makes them more open, and it gives them a lot of tools that will help them succeed in a globalizing world like we have today.
Well, as you rightly said, we must give them more experiences than things. But when it comes to things, where do we control and how do we draw the line?
Every family has their own idea about what works for them and what doesn't. If you're a family that really values hedonistic things like goods, then what you think is appropriate is going to be different than somebody else. So I think every family needs to strike their own balance, but it's also important to make your children appreciate and value what it is that they have. So exposing them to other people who might be less fortunate so that they realize that what they have is really a blessing and a privilege and it's not just a given is a really good thing to do. And we're lucky too now in Dubai, we have the Year of Giving, and there are a lot of wonderful initiatives that the government has started. So there is opportunities for children to see that.
Be a part of it.
Absolutely.
How important as parents is to say no to children?
Again, it depends on the family. I think that's how I'm going to start every answer. But we do need to say no. A lot of parents don't want to say no. They want to give their kids everything for a variety of reasons. A lot of parents who grew up with very restrictive parents themselves kind of go the other way. But the thing is that if we never say no to our kids, we're actually disadvantaging them, because we might not say no to them, but the world will. They'll hear it at school, they'll hear it at work, and if that's the first time they hear it, it's going to be very difficult. They won't have the coping mechanisms required to deal with that situation and problem solve their way out of it. So it's very key that we do say no. To what we say no, that's on a family level, but we do have to say no sometimes.
How do we convey what we are expecting from our children in a very positive way?
The very, very first thing is that we need to simplify it. A lot of times when we want something from them, especially when we're frustrated, we go on a very long explanation and they stop listening after a point.
It becomes like a lecture.
Exactly. And they tune it out. So what happens with our brain is if you keep hearing the same thing over and over again, your brain actually tunes out the noise. So keep it short, keep it simple. And one of the things I always tell the parents I work with is, don't ask a question if you're not giving them a choice. A lot of times parents will tell their child, oh, can you go clean your room? And then the child says no, and the parents get upset. But if you ask them, can you, then you have to be open to the fact that they might say no.
Say no.
Yeah, so a clear, simple statement is the most effective way to do that.
And it's also very important how you deliver it. I think that's what, as parents, we need to learn in today's day and age. Well, in today's day and age, the technology is growing in a fast pace. How do we match up to that, and how much do we give our kids an access to technology?
So whatever we decide to do, it's important that we have a conversation with our kids and the other members of the family. A lot of parents these days, they want to restrict their kids from a lot of the technology, but we don't actually have a choice because it's used so heavily at school and at home as part of their school projects.
And it's also their network.
Yeah, of course. It's definitely a modern method of communication. So we have to find what the boundary is that works for us. What I like to recommend is that when you have this conversation, you actually come up with your own family rules around technology use, around social media. And there are wonderful websites where you can print contracts and actually sign them so that if your child follows the rules, they maintain access to those things. And if they don't follow the rules, then there's the consequence that you agree on ahead of time.
How do we make them value relationships?
The very first thing is to have a good relationship with them ourselves. So how we connect with our children from the time that they're born, that serves as the blueprint for their relationships for the rest of their lives. When they're young, the most important thing is that they feel that they can trust us, that we understand their needs and we respond to them. As they get older, it's also important to talk to them. And when we talk to them, going back to the technology question, to talk to them without distractions, look in their eyes, hear what they're saying, ask them questions, to model good relationships ourselves so they can see us connecting with other generations as well as friends, and to also make use of some of the available technologies and innovations that we have now, like the Playdate app that's available. So if parents use that, they can connect their children to other local parents, and that actually will help establish relationships at 2 generations, and the benefits are there for everyone.
Absolutely. I think that's such a good, because we are role models for them, and what we do is what they learn.
Absolutely.
I always have a conversation with other parents saying that we think that we're overprotecting our children. How do we strike a balance of giving them enough freedom and not giving them enough?
So there's a couple of different ways to do it. One of the things that I usually recommend to parents is, again, going back to the values. You have specific values, those are the things that you don't really budge on, but other things you can be a little bit more flexible about. As children get older, starting from toddler years, but also especially in the young adult and teen years, they want to be able to exercise autonomy. That's not a time to be nagging them about what they're wearing, unless what they're wearing is so inappropriate that it goes against one of your values. You save that, you let them have that, and then you pick the battle over something that's really important. So that's definitely one of the methods that you can use. The other side of the question is, what do we expose them to? Do we let them fail, or do we help them swoop in at the last minute and save them? And my advice is we have to let them fail, because they're going to fail anyway. We fail as human beings, every single one of us. And so if we create this environment at home where our children are always rescued by us at the last minute, Once they go to university, once they get jobs, we're not going to be there and they're not going to have the coping skills required. So letting them fail in a controlled environment can actually be a good thing.
And as you said, it's a good thing even for parents to learn about their children, because then we know how they deal with failures.
Absolutely, yeah, and you use that as a teaching moment. So a good example that parents often come to me with is, well, I struggle with my child, they never want to do their assignments, and at the end I get so frustrated because grades are important, so I do it. And I recommend to them that, you try different strategies to encourage your child, but at the end of the day, let them go to school without the assignment. They'll get the 0, they'll be the ones that stand out, it's going to negatively affect their grades, and they'll be able to learn that their behavior has a consequence. And after it's done, you can start a conversation with them to get them to really think about what they did, how they could have done it differently, and also remind them that, okay, fine, you failed this assessment. It's not the end of the world. Brush yourself off, get back up, and let's get back to it.
Any tips you would like to give parents?
One of the most important things that I'd like to share with parents is to stop chasing perfection for yourself. There's so much information available to us right now. Everybody has an opinion. So many of us want to be the best that we can be for our kids. But at the end of the day, we're all going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It doesn't make you a bad mother or a bad father. It gives you an opportunity to reflect on what went wrong and how you could do it differently next time. So take it as an opportunity to learn and grow as a parent, rather than taking it as a shameful, negative experience.
Well, last but not the least, how do we become their best support system?
I think it starts from a young age. Some of the skills we talked about, talking to them. A lot of parents are distracted, as I said, but also when we talk sometimes, we don't actually listen. We're just letting them talk, very, very, very passive listening. It's important for us to listen to what they're saying, ask them follow-up questions, show them that we care, follow up with them, show empathy. If they have an experience that sounds silly to us, as they often do, we can still recognize that it was a difficult or unfortunate situation from them and give them that empathy that they need.
Well, Sarah, I think all the tips that you gave are so important, and there's so much to learn from, because I know in so many ways we constantly need that correction as parents to make children the best that they can be, and we are all learning. Thank you so much.
Thank you.